Good morning, everybody. Welcome to our online in Southeast Asia webinar today for Atlantic Canada companies. We're delighted that you could join us today. I know it's a struggle 2 weeks before Christmas. I certainly haven't done all my Christmas shopping, so I really appreciate the time that you've taken today to spend with us, talk a little bit about the online in Southeast Asia environment, what the websites look like in those regions, what social media look like in those regions, and so on. So while the last of you are logging on, I'll just do a quick introduction for those who don't already know us. So my name is Susanna Hardy, and I'm Chief Content Officer at IBT Online. So I'll get involved in all the things that involve with content, from keyword research to alt tags to the actual content to the videos that go on our website and on social media. I'm really delighted that Erin Smith has joined me today. Erin is a fount of knowledge for everything that goes in terms of organizing the Atlantic Canada Online Global Programs. She is the coordinator for the Nova Scotia Association of CBDCs, and is a great amount of information and help for you all on this. So today, perhaps quick introduction also about who we are as a company. So IBT Online is a private company, and we've been around since 2002, and we are 100% dedicated to servicing clients by building them websites and online marketing to help them grow their exports, their brand, their sales, their brand, their business online, internationally, globally. And we're really, really proud to be working with the Atlantic Canada provinces to bring you the online global programs for your websites. So a quick view of what we're going to be talking about today. So I'm going to talk about just very quickly what the Atlantic Canada program is and what's been put in place for you as Atlantic Canada companies to look at websites and marketing. Then we're going to go straight into Southeast Asia, the main characteristics of what it looks like online, really. That's really our speciality. You know, what are the key drivers that people are looking at? What are the main search engines? What do you need to do in terms of keyword research? All of that. Then we're going to just briefly talk about social media in Southeast Asia. It's a vast topic, but we're going to sort of focus in on a couple of main drivers, the main considerations that you need to be looking at. And then we're going to circle back in terms of the more detail on the online global programs. I have left time at the end for Q&A. Please do drop your questions in the chat box, and we'd be delighted to answer them. There is no such thing as a bad question, no such thing as a too long or too short question. All questions are good. So with that, let's get started on the Atlantic Canada, what we call the helping hand. And for those of you who have been to our other webinars, you'll know some of these slides already, but bear with me, because I think it's important to remind ourselves about all of this. We've put a page for the Atlantic Canada companies on our website. So Atlantic provinces on our website, the four provinces. We were really impressed with how the four provinces came together to discuss and band together and say, how can we best help our companies in today's environment, not just COVID, but after COVID as well, and to help facilitate our companies, our Atlantic companies, getting online tools so that they can reach further internationally. They can reach their target markets internationally. So that the four provinces came together, built this program up, and it's sort of spearheaded and managed by Erin for that. So it's really all about sort of website localization, e-commerce-enabled or not, but really getting your websites to punch above their weight and to go beyond their borders and to reach international markets. So as I said, there is a lot on our website that you can download that are free resources for you, and there's some dedicated pages which give you all the details on the webinars, on infographics, and so on. So we've got all this. Here we go. We've got a whole bunch of webinars that we've already done. We're coming to the end of this webinar series. There's only one left, which is on Thursday, about online in the USA. But if you want to go back and listen to any of the webinars, just click on the link and you can hear the recording. I think the very first one is the one that you really should have as a must-have. It's about website localization. And if you don't have an hour, don't worry. There's a short video that you can also watch, which says it all in 15 minutes. So what is website localization? Why do you need it? What does it do for you as a company? How will it help you grow your business internationally? And how will it reach your target markets in 15 minutes? So if you don't have an hour, check out the short video. I'm going to let Aaron just say a few words as well about the CBDCs and the program and how you can reach out to Aaron.
Thanks, Susanna. So welcome everyone to the final week of our webinar series. Some of you, this is your first webinar with us, so I'll just start with my brief intro. So I'm Erin Smith with the CBDC Association here in Nova Scotia, and we are the delivery agent for the project that's hosting all of these webinars. These webinars are made possible through the Atlantic Trade and Investment Growth Agreement. So this is a partnership of the federal government through ACOA and the 4 Atlantic provincial governments. So as we all know, COVID-19 has really amplified the need for selling and exporting online. And it's our hope that these webinars will really give you some tools and some information to help you do that successfully. So there's other supports that are available. I'd encourage you to reach out to your local ACOA rep or to the local provincial government folks in the trade departments to see what they can do to help. If you're not sure who that is, pop me a note. I'm happy to navigate that for you and make any connections that you need there. I'll also mention the second component of our online global programs. In addition to these webinars, we've got funding available for website localization. You'll work with IBT Online, you're going to create a marketing roadmap and a localized website for your target market. And the cost of that work, including that roadmap, starts at $17,500, but we provide up to $15,000. So it's a really great value. We've got 20 spots available. The deadline is Thursday of this week, so I really encourage you to get your application in. We've had lots of interest in the program. We'll put the links, they're on the screen there, and they'll be in the chat at some point during the webinar as well. And I'll be here at the end if there's any questions that anyone has on that funding or anything else. Back to you, Susanna.
Thanks, Aaron. So that you have a little impactful statement there about the need for online tools and the huge helping hand that the Atlantic provinces is giving you as a company. So let's dive into Southeast Asia. And I've put off and online, but really I'm going to give one slide about the offline, and then we're going to only talk about the online environment because that's really the core of our expertise. But I wanted to sort of share this map and say Southeast Asia is huge. It includes all these different countries, and then you can go on to the little tiny islands, like the Cocos Islands. That's in Southeast Asia. But the core, I mean, when we're looking and talking about Southeast Asia in terms of the online markets, the markets that really going to interest you, most of you will be interested in the big ones, but that includes Singapore, Vietnam, Indonesia, Thailand, the Philippines, and I'm going to talk about India too. India, some people put it in Southeast Asia, some people don't. I'm going to talk about it today because it is a main influencer for all those markets and shows very similar characteristics in there. I mean, obviously India is so huge that it merits its own webinar, but I wanted to tie it in here as well. What happens in India, you'll find the same things reverberating in Vietnam, in Cambodia, and in Malaysia, and vice versa. It's very much, in terms of the online world, a connected environment from the Bay of Bengal out to the North Pacific. That's the Southeast Asia market. I think a couple of characteristics that I wanted to highlight on this slide, and I think they're all, you'll find this again and again throughout this slide, this slide deck, this presentation. It's the world's fastest growing internet environment. Adoption rates, they're all in the double digits, and that's pre-COVID. So, since, for example, Canada's internet adoption rate at the moment is growing at, pre-COVID 2019, it was growing at about sort of like 3-4%. Okay, COVID accelerated things, so it got up to like 10%. These places used to be at 10, they're now in their 20% growth rates, at least. Some of them even stronger. So they've come from a low level, but they're accelerating very fast into the internet side. The other one that I wanted to say, and I wanted to highlight this so much that I said it 3 times, mobile, mobile, mobile. Throughout all of these areas, people found the internet first through their mobile phone, smartphone. The mobile phone is a genuine work tool. Your websites, your social media, everything you're doing online needs to have, probably be mobile first. A lot of the websites we design, in fact, for these regions, we'll design it for a mobile app first, and then see how it looks on a big computer. You know, if you look at all the statistics, and we'll see them later, about how companies use the internet, or how many companies use social media for business purposes. Again, in places like Canada, you'll get sort of like, oh, 15%, 20%. In these regions, you're getting sort of over 50%. Because they're on their phone, they're using the internet in a much more dynamic way than we're used to in the UK or in Canada, the USA, Europe, and so on. They're much younger. They use social media in a more interactive way. They're mobile friendly. They are very early adopters of technology. And again, we'll see this later when we go through some of these. But what I would say as well is that there's some challenges. And I've written one down here, which is infrastructure challenges. But in fact, there's several big challenges. Infrastructure is one. One of the other big challenges that you'll find is online security. We'll talk about that in particular as well. So I wanted to say, you know, internet penetration by region, and this is, you know, obviously for the world, but it does show you these areas and things. So, you know, for North America, for Canada, internet penetration is about 88%. And for Europe, most of Europe is about 92%. Now in Southeast Asia, you'll see those numbers there, you know, as low as 48%. But most of them are on the sort of 60, 66, 65, even 70%. Exceptions like Singapore, where it's like 90%, but most of them are in their sort of mid-60s. And that's one of the reasons why you're seeing this big growth, is this in the internet sort of world, a lot of people like Google, Facebook, YouTube all talk about the last billion. The last billion is who's going to be the last billion to join the internet. And that's basically Southeast Asia, and India in particular. Sorry for the noise, my dog barking in the background here. So again, social media use. We saw those internet penetration rates at 66%, but here they're equivalent to what you have in North America. So, you know, 70% of North Americans are using social media. Well, 71% of them are in Southeast Asia, 60%, you know, things like that. So again, you have these very strong numbers coming out in much of Southeast Asia. And my final, the final sort of world thing that I wanted to show was mobile connectivity by region. So that's reflecting your mobile use and how much the infrastructure is built on mobile versus roads, trains, buses, all that other kind of heavy infrastructure. And here what's interesting is how much of the world, and particularly places like Southeast Asia, are way beyond what we have in North America. So North America mobile connectivity is about 106%, Southeast Asia 135%. And again, we're going to see this throughout the presentation. So again, this is just reflecting those major characteristics you have: mobile enabled, mobile, young, dynamic, early tech advancers, high growth for the internet in any case. There's a couple of markets now that I want to drill down on and sort of reinforce those. So I'm going to start actually with Vietnam. I thought about putting them in alphabetical order, but then I actually just put them in the order that interests me most, just arbitrarily. Vietnam is actually one of the most interesting markets at the moment in Southeast Asia. It's very dynamic, and we're seeing a lot of companies putting out, asking for websites for the Vietnamese market. I was looking as well about the trade between Canada and Vietnam. and I was really amazed to see how strong and how much growth there is in that. Not just because of Vietnam to Canada, but also Canada to Vietnam, particularly in forestry products. It seems like the entire the furniture market has moved to Vietnam, as far as I can see. But it's an amazing market to be online in. First of all, you know, with it's got a big population, you're nearly 100 million people, but you know the number of mobile phones is 150% of the population. So you know, many people, 50% of the population is going around with 2 phones. We still have, you know, 2 or 3 different phones, different SIM cards as well. And the number of the internet users, 70% of the population. So it's got a high internet penetration rate. Almost all of them are on social media, so 67% are on social media. That big population and hugely mobile friendly. And if we look at the amount of time spent on the internet in Vietnam, you'll see 6.5 hours a day. This is pre-COVID. You know, it is shot up since then. So on this slide, you'll see the average growth in the number of internet users was plus 10%. That's throughout the year 2019. In this year, I don't have the stats yet. But I have seen a lot of articles. We're talking about plus 30%. So a plus 30% growth of internet users adopting in Vietnam this year. And 6.5 hours a day, that's certainly up significantly as well. So you know, it is if you're interested in the Vietnamese market, you know, they're all online and they're all on social media as well. But I wanted to point out as well, just as we saw in the webinar we did last week on Korea, I wanted also to share with you the most visited websites in Vietnam. Google is interesting, but we'll talk about that in a minute. Number 2 and 3 are social media. It's YouTube and Facebook. And again, we'll come back to YouTube and Facebook. We'll talk a little bit more about social media in these areas. But all the other ones going down this list all end with, you know, .vn. They're Vietnamese specific websites. They're built for Vietnam, and even the ones that aren't, like 588.com, is it's actually a Chinese one, so it's not in English. You know, and even the YouTube and the Facebook are Vietnamese versions of it. And again, as I said, we'll get onto that. But I wanted to show you how rich the online environment is in this market. And finally, just the last thing, we did mention sort of Facebook and YouTube. I want to point out how strong those are in this country. And that's the same that you'll find in the Philippines, in Malaysia, in Indonesia. Facebook and YouTube dominate by a huge way. So a lot of people will have, you know, up to 10 social media platforms that they're using on a very regular basis. And but Facebook and YouTube will definitely be right up there. The other ones that I wanted to just really point out on this slide is that WeChat is very important and growing double-digit rates. TikTok, right, and then ones like sort of Line, also for Asia. Sort of it's like a WhatsApp. It's like a mini WeChat. Line is very similar to WeChat. It's a whole holistic environment. So you've got quite a few non-American players in there. In fact, and again, there's something we'll see regionally. Out of the top 20, you'll get something like half and half American, half and half Chinese in terms of the social media platforms. And this is reflected throughout the region. You've basically got a battle of the titans. You've got the Facebook versus YouTube. You've got Amazon versus Alibaba playing out in this region as they vie for space. I wanted also to talk briefly about Indonesia. Again, similar slides here. With you know, more than double the population of Vietnam. It's also a fascinating market. Very, very diverse. But the online one is where you can actually connect with all of your target prospective buyers. in Indonesia. And again, mobile friendly, 124% of the population have smartphones, mobile phones. Of that, about 90% are smartphones. Internet users, 175 million internet users, and almost all of them, again, in social media. So it's very similar stats to what we saw in Vietnam. And if we look again at the amount of time spent, this again, it's pre-COVID, 8 hours a day. That's one of the highest in the world. 8 hours a day Indonesia spends online. A lot of that is on YouTube, but a lot of that is doing business online on their mobile phones as well. And I want to highlight as well the growth rate. Again, this highlights the growth rate of the internet in this region, plus 17%. That's again pre-COVID. Social media behavior, you're getting similar numbers to what we saw in Vietnam. But I wanted to highlight as well the percentage of internet users who use social media for work purposes, 65%. And when Hootsuite do this analysis, using social media for work purposes is of a significant amount. So for example, you spend an hour a day or 1/3 of your time on social media is for business purposes. And the business purposes goes, searching for companies that you want to buy something for searching for suppliers, searching for distributorships, and so on, is via social media. And social media is used in a much more dynamic way than you'll find in most more established countries like Canada. So again, so these numbers, I think, tell that very well. The average amount of time that a Canadian spends online is about 5 hours. As I said, in Indonesia, it's like 8 hours. We talked a little bit, mentioned Facebook and YouTube. Here you have an example. We said, Facebook has this huge reach throughout the region, and it's some of its largest markets in the world today, India and Indonesia, the Philippines, and so on. So very actively used, and we'll come back to that and drill down more on it. But what I think is interesting as well is that there's continued to see growth in Facebook. And in markets like the US and Canada and Western Europe, Facebook is actually stagnating in many of those markets. That's one of the reasons why they bought WhatsApp, one of the reasons why they bought Instagram, is that the young are leaving Facebook and they're going towards a TikTok and Instagram and other stuff. But in these regions, you'll find that Facebook is still very much embraced by the entire population, by the full age spectrum. India, as I said, merits its own webinar itself, but does have such a big sway and influence in this region that I think it's worth at least bringing it out. The same characteristics that you see in those other markets are just magnified in India by the size of the population. So, 1.4 billion people, mobile phone connections, 1 billion of them have mobile phones, not all smartphones, but mobile phones. Whereas internet penetration rate is at 50%. So, but that's why people say, is that the next billion that's going to come? So who's the next person to go online? Where's the next, 500 million going to come from? Here we have it from India. And equally active social media users, 29% of the population, but that's 400 million people. So, that's enough to be able to find your prospective buyers and connect with your prospective in-market partners and find your distributors with. In terms of growth rates, this is pre-COVID. Number of internet users grew by 23% in 2019. Social media users, 48%. Mobile phone connections did go down a little bit, but they're still over, they're still well over, they're still about 150% of the population. But nevertheless, these are, a near 50% increase in social media users is pretty stunning. And that did not slow down in 2020. Again, just to say, where are people going in India? Yes, they'll go to Google, but it's Google India. Yes, they're going to Facebook, the same ones again, Facebook and YouTube. But then we get down to other names, and even Amazon, it's Amazon India. A lot of these countries have .in for India. So these are, again, the most visited websites are not always what you would expect. And in terms of social media overview, the percentage of active social media users via mobile phone, 100%. So again, the dominance of mobile phone. And what I find really interesting, 2.5 hours spent on social media a day on average for 400 million people. 400 million people spend 2.5 hours a day on social media in India, of which half of them are using it for business. So I think that for me sums up the need not just to have great localized websites, but also to make sure that you're really engaging with your prospects online in those markets. Let's look at some of the big characteristics that we need for Southeast Asian websites. And I thought I'd start with this absolutely blank slide. That shows you Google's search engine market share for the last 12 months. So as you can see, it's pretty stable. And right at the very bottom, circling around 2 or 3%, is Baidu, Yahoo, Yandex, Bing, all the other ones. So Google in terms of market share. And that's for the entire region. This is for all of Asia outside China. So they have 95% market share in Thailand and in Vietnam and Indonesia, Malaysia, and so on. So that at least makes your task a little bit simpler. For that. But there's, as I said, a battle going on nonetheless. I think there's 2 things I wanted to bring out. The first is that your Google is going to be in the local language. So this is, for example, this is Google Vietnam. So when your prospective buyer goes online, he goes to Google Vietnam. He does not go to a Google that looks like the Google you're using, either in French or English in the Atlantic provinces. He's going to Vietnam Google. So don't think of Google as a single company. Think of it as lots of different companies that go for each single market. And each one, Google is saying what's relevant for that Vietnamese, in this case, searcher. And if your website is in English or French, hosted in Canada with Canadian references and downloads and pictures, and the back coding is all orientated towards Canada, Google Vietnam is not going to think you're relevant. So if you are targeting the Vietnamese market, for example, or the Indian market, or the Indonesian market, the Filipino market, make sure that Google, that local Google, thinks you're relevant. And the other point I wanted to bring out really was the dominance of the social media apps. The 12 out of the top 20 are all from China, and they're all owned by Baidu. Baidu is China's search engine, predominant search engine, and they own quite a lot of, they own WeChat, for example, and they own lots of other social media apps. And there's a real battle going on with the social media and Baidu and Google, so that Baidu is really creeping up on market share and gaining relevance in these markets because they're gaining it via search engines, and also they're gaining it by using the local language. And in this next slide, I'll show you a little bit what I mean. How many languages do you need for Southeast Asia? Why can't you just use English? English is the second most spoken language in India, the Philippines, and Thailand, and Indonesia, and Vietnam, and so on. Actually, not sure it's Chinese, but you can get by in a lot of these markets with English. So, one of the choices you have is to create websites for these markets in English. And I wanted to show you this example here of We built a website, for example, for Singapore in English, and Indonesia in English for this company. So they have actually several English websites. They have to have one for the Middle East anyway. And each one, though, is localized for that local market. And there's some more examples I'll give later. But in each case, you have to make sure that the English you're using is the English that's used in that country. So the English used in the Philippines is not going to be the same. The keywords will be different. The spelling is going to be different. The metrics of the things will be different. And so in each case, you have to make sure that you're using the right keywords, the right kind of English. So it's really like building a whole new website, making sure that you have the right language that ticks all the boxes for Google in that area. An example I like to give is I was talking to a colleague of mine who's from India. I was speaking to them on WhatsApp for India, and they said, well, let's bring them. Let's. And I said, well, do you have to postpone that meeting? He said, no, we can prepone it. I said, what? Yes, prepone the meeting. I said, what is that? To prepone something is to bring it forward. To postpone, bring it back. Who invented that word? Well, this is apparently a very common word in India, prepone. So, this is something I've never heard of before. So this is just a little example. The English used in different places of the world is different. And as Canadian companies, you know this very well. The English used in Nova Scotia is going to be different than the English used in Texas, let's say. So localizing your website, even if it's in English, it still needs to be localized. Here's an example of what I mean here. This is another website we built for India in English. Social media that goes with it is all in English. But as you can see on the left, there's a map of India. The number of languages in India. Okay, English might be English is like everybody's second language. There's something like 1,000 different languages in India, and this map shows the main ones. So you can get by, but nobody's 100% comfortable in English. Everybody's like, this is my second language. So they're happy to go on, but they might not always search for you right away in English. Nevertheless, one way of reaching the entire Indian subcontinent is through an English language website, even if you do adapt the English and do the rest of the localization in place. Where the other search engines are gaining traction is increasingly to offer websites in the other languages. So Baidu is by far the leader in Tamil or Telugu language or Hindi language websites. And large populations like the Hindi population will say, well, I don't actually need an English language website. I can get more than what I need on my Hindi websites. I don't need to find an English one. There's a lot now going on in the Hindi language I can find. So I don't need to find that English one. So just another example of a company with an Indian website, and I wanted to highlight. So these are companies who have decided, give me an Indian website, but I'm going to stick to the English for now. At least that way it could be a broad brush. So you can localize your websites, keeping them in English, but not in French, but in English for the Southeast Asian markets. But in each case, they still need to be heavily localized. One of the key ways that you localize something is by choosing the right domain name. And particularly the top level domain names. So I've listed here what the domain names are. Singapore, for example, .sg, Indonesia.id. But many of them have restricted ownership rules. So you can't easily buy them unless you have a local partner. And this is something we say a lot. If you have a local partner, they can buy your domain name for you, but then you need to contract with them to say that you have the exclusive right and the ownership of that domain name. Otherwise, you're basically giving your online real estate to your in-market partner, which can't be a good idea. There are, however, as I said, they're restricted, but they're not too restricted. You can get around it. And this is an example of a website we built this is for Vietnam, and it's .com.vn, and that works perfectly well. Google recognizes that as a very significant, relevant top-level domain name. So although it's not a .vn alone, it is a .com.vn, it works perfectly well. And that's less restricted. So that's another way of going about it. And the same holds for many of those other countries throughout Southeast Asia. Another issue with localized websites in this region is the characters. Many of the countries, if you are going to go for a translation, for example, whether it's Tagalog in the Philippines or Vietnamese, characters work differently than, say, the English language or French language on a website. They work, and the two things that you'll notice most, they take less space. So that can shift your design. And suddenly you've got a lot of white space on your website, and how to fill that up and make that still look interesting, but not too crowded. So your design can change a little bit. And indeed, that's what we had to do with this website, to change a little bit the menu and the design functions for that. And just also the layout of it, you need to make it look very clean, easy to read, because the characters themselves, particularly if you're looking at ones like Vietnamese, which have a lot of accents and things on all the characters, it gets hard to read. So you make sure the font is correct. You make sure that the font's the right type, and you make sure that it's easy to read, particularly if you're on your mobile phone. And the third thing, which is for characters, is they have something called double byte. In other words, they take up quite a lot of space, and for your metadata, that's going to affect your metadata. So when you are writing metadata is normally 155 characters. On this, you're going to need about 50 characters. That works. The last thing about the characters, and just generally about the websites and all, it's really important to add a local in-market partner at the bottom of your as a contact. Many of these markets, if you go outside India, are not happy really talking in English. They will not, your Vietnamese person will not be totally at ease. They need a little bit of reassurance. So if you've got an in-market partner, put them on the website. Make sure that there's a contact there. It does enormous good for your conversions, especially when people are looking at your website and they don't quite dare reach out to you. If you do have any kind of local person or in-market partner that can help with that, that's a really great help. I just wanted to add a last thing about the websites, which is about e-commerce. Now, I don't want to dominate today's webinar about e-commerce. It's a huge topic for this region, but I think it's important to put it out there that if you have e-commerce ambitions, Southeast Asia is the place to be. They are incredible adopters of e-commerce. It's growing exponentially and in a very interesting way as well. There are some challenges, particularly with regards to payment processing and payment gateways, and also in terms of deliveries. There are lots of different delivery options you can have, from little tiny stores that deliver on motorbikes and all kinds of things. But these are fast evolving areas too. I mean, the payments thing is being resolved really by local players like Paytm. So, the e-commerce environment might be different from what you're used to. So I've put up some of the logos of some of the top e-commerce players in these areas. You might recognize some of them. The one on the far left, the yellow one, for example, is Flipkart. Just like what I said earlier about Google and PALLADIO, this is a region which has seen sort of battle of the titans for market share. Amazon is buying up local players everywhere. Alibaba is buying up other players. Then Walmart gets involved. So a lot of these companies are now also owned by the big guys, by the Alibabas, the Amazons, and so on. But each market has a distinct flavor, if you like, a distinct Indian flavor in this case, but or Indonesian flavor, each one. But it is a very, very rewarding market to be in if you're interested in e-commerce. And if you want to know more about that, let me know and I'll circle back. The last thing about good websites that I wanted to highlight was really about digital compliance. And I've put PIPA, which is actually the one for South Korea, but it's the one that a lot of people are looking at as a precursor to them. Southeast Asia used to be an absolute wild west of the online world. Your websites weren't safe. There was no encryption. You were getting spam all the time. It was just dreadful, and a terrible environment as well for hacking, and as I said, for spam things. It has totally shifted and is becoming much more regulated. And certainly any website that you build there has got to be heavily encrypted and with enforced security, but you can now do that very well. And all the big governments there, almost all of them, are looking at bringing in digital compliance regulation, and they're looking at the very, very strict ones. PIPA and GDPR are the two models that they're looking at. So basically, if you are building websites in these regions, just build it to that level and spec, and you'll be fine. Because that's a space that I think will change and become heavily regulated within the next 12 months throughout. So just build the websites from the start at that higher level, and you'll be fine. And it's also, I think, increasingly seen as the right thing to do in all markets. Ooh, quick word on social media. We have actually touched on that quite a bit already for that. I tell you what, though, I've forgotten. Here we go. Before I go on, I'll launch a quick poll. I want to ask you all, give me a chance to drink some water. I want to ask you all if you're already actively doing business in Southeast Asia. Are you actively doing business in Southeast Asia? Are you doing it with an in-market partner? Yes, are you online? Are you still thinking about it? Where do you stand on this? And I'm really, really happy to see that many of you are already doing business. The majority of you, in fact, a big majority, are already actively doing business in this area, in this region, with an in-market partner. There's a couple of you, a little handful, who are doing it online as well. Congratulations, well done. And none of you are doing only online, which makes sense. But the big majority of you are already in-market partner, and perhaps, I hope, looking to get some online strength for that region. I'm going to close the poll. There is another poll coming up, but thank you very much for responding so enthusiastically on that one. Let's talk very briefly then about social media in this region. As I said, it is really important. Remember those numbers we saw about internet penetration rates, which were like in the 50s. Social media penetration rate in these regions are in the sort of 60, 63%, 71% for Eastern Asia. That's more Japan. But it's a very, very vibrant market. Remember, we saw also those numbers of 20% growth rates. And in many ways, I think the thing to remember about here is it really is a perfect environment for this. A lot of it is also what people in that area called an age dividend. So this is not only what's driving the economy, it's also driving the online environment. Southeast Asia's demographics just mean that it's going to be the youngest region by age, as the youngest by age region in the world. Okay, that might be also, if you include India, then it certainly is. The majority of the population in this region is under the age of 35. So this is really one of the key drivers for the online environment, and particularly for the social media. I wanted to add there for India, half of its 1.3 billion are between the age of 0 and 25. So that's even a stronger reason for this. Quick adopters of social media, and perhaps also social media is also where you go to find legitimacy. You go there to find So you might not trust the news. You might not trust the newspaper. You might be wary of your own government. In which case, you know, use your social media to connect with your peers, with your friends, with anyone else there, in order to engage directly and get the legitimate answer. What you would find is a more legitimate answer, and that's what you're seeing throughout in a lot of these markets. You know, where can I buy the best ball bearings? Where can I buy the best machines that do X? Well, I'm not going to necessarily go to my search engine. Even I'm going to go online on my social media, and I will have WhatsApp groups, and I will have Facebook groups, LinkedIn groups that are for engineers, for fishermen, for housewives, for you know, software engineers, whatever it is. And you're connecting within those regions, within those silos, to ask them questions. So there's a lot more intergroup discussions, and that's really where your online marketing strategy has to go. So rather than sort of blasting something out, just sort of generally like, oh, let's write a blog and send that out in the world. No, here you're going to say, okay, if I'm going to write a blog, who am I have to connect with my buyer persona within their groups, within their social media groups. And that's how you get the really strong interactions and grouping in these areas. We've talked a bit about Facebook and YouTube, the two giants of the region. The Chinese social media apps, WeChat, Link, especially, are absolutely snapping at the heels, and a lot of competition there. But for now, at least these two, Facebook and YouTube, absolutely dominate. Facebook, you have the stats here about sort of the growth in numbers for that, and it is, I believe, now Facebook's biggest market in the world is now India. Its second largest in the world is Indonesia. Third largest is perhaps Brazil. And then, you know, the US comes right down there. So this is, you know, absolutely the future for Facebook in these markets. YouTube, if you remember the slides from the beginning where, you know, 90% of social media was on YouTube, you know, there are many markets many countries who are spending up, you know, sort of 2 or 3 hours on social media per day. A good hour of that will be on YouTube. YouTube is used like a search engine. So YouTube will be, you know, where do I find the best, or the best, you know, the best Thai food in this city? Where do I find it? I go on YouTube. I'll go to YouTube and I'll find that. People paste YouTube and upload their own YouTube very easily, very quickly, which is, I think, one of the reasons why the later success of TikTok as well. I'm gonna leave social media now, unless you want to go back and, you know, drill down on some of the individual countries or some of the strategies in that. But I thought I'd leave it for now because we have we talked a lot about this, and then just talk very briefly about the Atlantic Canada Online Global Programs, what they are, a bit more in detail, what kind of things they can give you. So, you know, this is something, as I said, that the 4 provinces came together and said, we need something to build for our companies in the region. How can we help them going forward during pandemic, but after COVID as well? What happens in 2021 when the world starts to open up again? We, you know, thank heavens, but how do they really go global? Well, they need online tools to do that. And if you've got in-market partners in these Southeast Asian markets, the single best tool you can give that distributor, that local distributor, is a local website. The website's owned by you, the website's managed by you or by us or whoever it is, but functions to bring you top-line growth in that market and to help your local distributor generate sales. So I've listed here some of the key things that people often say. This is how. This is why I want a website. I want a website to grow brand awareness, leadership engagement, things like that. When it comes down to it, it's all about your top line. You want to generate sales. You want to generate leads. You want to have brand awareness across that in order to generate sales. Generate exports, sales, brand, and business. That's what online tools do. There are basically 3 types of options within the Atlantic Canada Online Global programs. There's an option A, an option B, an option E, E for e-commerce. A is basically 1 or 2 markets, but the point is that the scope of work is defined. It's got, it's 2,000 words, it's this, it's that, but it's a very good website. It's totally localized, totally translated, totally hosted locally, with the right compliance, so on and so on. So it's perfect for your in-market partners to use as a springboard. And that's either 1 market or 2 markets anywhere in the world. So you could have Indonesia and Saudi Arabia, whatever it is you want, China and Mexico, whatever. Option B is for anything that's slightly out of scope for that. So you say, I need to do a website design as well. I need new content. I need CRM integrations. I need to link with my CMS, and it has to be 3 times the size of this. Then it's option B. But the grants that Erin talked about still apply. Option E is basically a website with e-commerce enabled, and that the price depends on the level of SKUs. But in each case, is valid for the grants for the program. So here's an example that I already showed you from a company for an option A. Option A, then the cost is for the website is $16,000 plus 1,500 for marketing roadmap, and the Erin talked about 15,000 budget in terms of the grant. It is a 2 market expansion, 12 pages, 2,000 words, or else 1 market if you prefer. Some examples of this is an example of a company who wanted to have very, very concerned about their brand because they do makeup. So their brand had to be absolutely spot on, the right colors, the right feel, everything else. So we created a website for them in Saudi Arabia, and another one in Mexico, really replicating the imagery and the brand. This is an example of a company where we redid their entire website, and then they wanted one for Mexico as well. That was their big target market. It also had to connect into their database systems and their ERP. So that was them for them. That's an option B, and as I said, the grant is eligible to the same amount on that, on 15,000. And then here's another example. Sorry, another example of this one is for a China market, online in China, and we also did a UK website for them. Again, it's about brand recognition, increasing sales, and so on. And if you want any more details on any of those case studies, there's lots on our website that you can download as little videos. Option E is basically, as I said, an e-commerce enabled. The small one of it is 20 pages, 100 SKUs. That's not a bad size for an e-commerce site, by the way. The cost is $16,000 with the same grant possibility, and then a marketing help with that for another, 1,500. So here you have an example of a website in Brazil, excuse me, that we did for this company on e-commerce. And as I said, the grant is available for that as well. Excuse me. Erin, I don't know if you want to jump in here just to say a few more words before we get back to questions.
Yeah, now I'll just do the reminder that the deadline to apply is on Thursday. It'll be Thursday night at midnight, but I'm not going to be up at midnight to turn off the collector. So Friday morning when I get in to the office, I'll be turning off that survey link. But getting your applications before then, that would be much appreciated.
Terrific, absolutely terrific. And the application forms are available in English and in French. And I forgot to mention in the beginning of this, if you want to do any of this in French, I'd be more than happy to. And we have native French speakers on all, so we would be with you on that in terms of the application. So a couple of major sort of the takeaways, and then there's a couple of questions that have come in. Don't forget that you can add questions into the chat box anytime. So if you scroll down, because one or two of you have asked how to ask questions. If you go down, on the right-hand side, you should see a chat function. If you go in there, put in your question, and then I can see it, and we'll get down to it at the end. If for any reason you have a problem with that, wing me an email afterwards, and we'll get back to you directly. So I guess the first thing, we would just like to impress upon you all is that for us, I mean, we would say this, we're in the online world, but for us, you're able these days to use online tools to reach your target markets. It used to be that big websites and online marketing was reserved for only companies with very deep pockets. That is no longer the case. Exporters of all sizes. If you've been doing exporting for a while, you've got some in-market partners. They need a website in order to boost their sales. That's what it's like in today's world. People will go online to search for you first, and it's a great way of connecting. So this is good news for you. You know exactly where your clients, your prospects, your future distributors are. They're all online. You know how to reach them. Social media. So localized websites is what you need. This websites that function well in these various markets. They're called localized websites. And so really take advantage of the Atlantic Canada Online Global programs, basically that help you grow your sales, grow your top line in any market in the world. It's functioning good websites. Next steps for us: go back and listen to any of the webinars that tickle your fancy. And I would particularly recommend the very first one, which explains what are localized websites, what are the necessary things that you need to have for localized websites. Then get your teams together, figure out if this is a good thing for you or not, and apply. And you can go onto Aaron's website or our website and download the application forms at all time, and you have until Thursday night to do that. So with that, we hope to see you all also on Thursday for our very last webinar of the year, which is online in the USA. And I promise not to play Bruce Springsteen, but hopefully we'll answer any questions on that market as well. There are a couple of questions come in, and one of you does seem to have some problems asking the question. I'm not sure why that is. Can I speak about the potential of B2B applications, particularly social media and digital marketing? Absolutely. Online marketing is not for B2C alone. It is for B2B. There's some other slides I have which show how many, across the world, how many B2B companies look online through social media, and it's well over half. So, and I think Southeast Asia is a perfect example of that. Just this whole phenomenon of using social media to find your distributors, or to find the products you're looking for on a B2B way, not just B2C. In fact, B2C would be very much used for even TikToks, but like an Instagram, certain parts of either YouTube or the much more the Chinese ones like a Kui or a Bilibili, which show much more sort of short videos and they're more consumerish. But if you're looking for much more B2B platforms, definitely Facebook in Southeast Asia, YouTube in Southeast Asia, and even LinkedIn. But LinkedIn is really much more for India than the other ones. So if you're looking on India, I go for LinkedIn, but the other ones definitely Facebook and YouTube. As I mentioned, both of these groups, but particularly Facebook, has very good ways of identifying. Let's say you make, you want to identify with certain advanced manufacturing engineers who specialize in a particular process, because you know that those are your decision makers. That's your buyer persona. In these regions, particularly if they're mobile first, they have WhatsApp groups and Facebook groups, which can be open, and therefore you can suggest something. You can go to them and say, I have some relevant content for you. I have a blog which solves some of your problems that you're looking for. You within your advanced manufacturing engineering group, I know that you have an issue with this. I have a solution for you. Here it is in my blog. And that Facebook group can be open in those areas so that you can submit that blog to them. And that's how you're going to find the reaction that you're going to get with the engineers, the local engineers. So that's a fantastic way of going B2B, interacting B2B on the for your prospective buyers. I hope that was clear. If you want more details on that, or to figure out like a whole strategy on that for the B2B, definitely circle back to me. But the clear message is social media is a must for B2B companies. You can get away with image only on B2C, but all parts of social media are relevant for the B2B side. There's one question that's come in for Erin as well, which is just about how many companies are eligible for this program, please.
We have 20 spots. So there's 20 spots available for all of Atlantic Canada.
Okay, great. I've run out of time. Thank you all very much. There's a couple more questions in there. There's a couple who are also asking about recording. Yes, you will all get a recording of this webinar in 2 days' time. And other questions that I didn't answer, I will circle back to you directly and email you with the answers. Erin, thank you so much for your attendance and for organizing and for helping me out here. And most of all, also thank all the Canadian companies who have attended. I admire the spirit. It's only a week before Christmas and you're looking at webinars. Well done, you. Hope to see you all soon also for your applications. We look forward to building your websites and getting onto that with that. Thank you all very much. Have a great rest of the day. Bye-bye.